Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's happening, folks? You know what time it is? It's time for exit strategy. So come on in and join your boy as we get ready to have a blast. All right, let's see how it goes.
Every season, believers have said Jesus is coming soon. But now we're getting stories of people all over the world receiving visitations from Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And say, I am coming sooner than you think.
Yeah.
I am coming. And he's only tarried so that more people can be saved. And, it's hard to watch the suffering in the world and not wonder why he doesn't come. And it's hard. God doesn't want anybody to suffer. We do cruel and unbelievably heinous things to one another. And those of us who believe in the goodness and justice and mercy of God say, why, Lord, why are you waiting? And he'll say, because I love them too. And I have a plan. I have a plan. It may not be when you think it's going to come, but it's going to come.
Yeah.
And Jesus will set his feet on that beautiful Mount of Olives right where he left off from. And all things will be made right. And there will be no more tears. And there will be no more suffering. His promises are true.
What's going on, folks? Welcome to Exit Strategy. So wild, man. It's so wild. If you were like I was, what this woman was on the screen just crying and talking about, that was once a hope of yours. That was your exit strategy. Your exit strategy was, as bad as this life is, don't worry, because one day God's going to come back and he's going to take us out of here, or he's going to fix it, or he's going to, that was your way out of the madness that is the world that you live in. But at some point you realize that that exit strategy that believers have been waiting for, what she's talking about, for going on 2,000 years now. 2,000 years. And at some point you realize, I think I need an exit strategy from my exit strategy. You ever go away on a vacation and you do so much on your vacation where you feel like, man, I need a vacation from my vacation. At some point, the believer realizes, I need an exit strategy from my exit strategy, because what I thought Jesus was getting me of and ushering me into, my gosh, it never comes. There's a saying I used to, as a believer, I used to say this to myself to comfort myself. Because somebody said, I forgot who it was, some old preacher said, all of sin is bondage, and the rest of what it promises never comes. I used to cling to that because I'm like, oh, there are things I was tempted to do, but I'm like, oh, that's just going to create bondage. And the other stuff that it says is going to bring me never really comes. Well, you could say the same thing about your Savior, believer. He offers you bondage. He wants you to be a slave of his, but then the rest of what he promises, it never comes. Here we are 2,000 years later. So we're going to talk about the return of the return of the King, the return of Jesus tonight. And the reason why I thought that would be apropos, because many of you are, like I have been, looking around and trying to figure out what in the world has just happened. So we just had an election, and in January, we're going to inaugurate a new president. And we've got 2 months to get our hearts and minds and friendships and relationships uh, aligned for this transition. But as we get ready to talk about some of this, Once again, welcome to Exit Strategy. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Ichabod. If you haven't already, subscribe. Do me a favor, click the little thumbs up, give us a like. If you're not a Patreon supporter, I I always hesitate to ask people to join the Patreon, but because I know there are a lot of people who need it more than I need it. If you can go support Tim Mills on his channel. I just saw a message from Tim Mills today. He's going through some legal issues with his family. He's saying anybody who can help me, go support Tim Mills. A lot of these other supporters, Derek Bennett from Atheologica is back online after a 10-month hiatus. Go check out the video he just put up talking about his battle with addiction. It's a beautiful, beautiful video. Um, so there are other people who are online, and I know it's almost like you guys have Amazon Prime, you got Hulu, you got Apple TV, you got Sling, you all these apps on your TV. You're paying $5 of them, $10 of them, da da da. Then you come online, and maybe you're paying for a YouTube subscription or whatever, and then your counter apologists or your favorite people you like to watch, they're asking you to join their Patreon and all that and all. So I'm very hesitant to say, hey, join the Patreon, or hey, support, because I know you got, funds going out of your pocket here, there, and another. But I also know that we support the things that we value. And so if you do value this kind of content, consider supporting $2, $3 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. Consider supporting. Um, I always try to show love when I see some of my counter apologist, former believer friends online. I'll jump on and I'll just super chat just to let them, hey, just want to encourage you to keep going. And so sometimes the super chats and the Patreon encourages people like me to just keep going. Like, oh, it is useful. It is helpful to somebody. So all that to say, the link to the Patreon is there in the live chat. It will also be in the description to the video. But welcome to Exit Strategy. I do this because I became an unbeliever gradually. For 10 years ago, 2014, the foundation of my faith cracked when a Christian gave me room to think that I needed to rethink Genesis. And although they were talking about evolution being true, I didn't believe him at the time, but it made me say, wait, so I don't have the thing that I think I have. I think I have truth. I don't have that. And that just started me down a trajectory of first couple of years living in denial. But somewhere around 2018, 2019, I began to own that I don't believe this anymore. 2021, I began to do the research so that I could articulate it. Wrote a book called Let There Be Gaslight. And then some friends of mine, Jay Witt, Albert Kim, said, hey, we want to help you respond to the criticism of your book. And I've been online ever since. Mainly, I'm online because I know there are other people who have questions, you have doubts, you have thoughts that you are afraid to develop because you're like, even though I'm questioning this, is God going to strike me down for questioning this? I got online because I wanted to be a living, breathing example to people that you can follow the evidence where it leads. You can unbelieve the thing that you spent your life believing. And guess what? The ground's not going to open up and swallow you. Lightning's not going to strike. Life does not, on average, get worse. In a lot of ways, it gets better, even though it may get harder because now you've got to reorient your worldview, some of your relationships, maybe even your marriage and your employment. I've got people in my inbox on Facebook saying, yo, I'm a pastor. I don't believe this anymore. I don't know how to navigate from here to freedom, thought freedom, let alone freedom in my relationships, let alone being able to express what I believe because my finances and my family and so much is dependent on this thing. So anyway, I got online just to help people realize you're not the only one going through this. There is a great awakening, not a great falling away. It's a great awakening of people realizing we've been believing myths and it's not helpful to our world. And so now here we are having just come through an election where a majority of the country sided to elect someone, and not everyone had this as their reason, but a lot of the people who elected former, soon to be, once again, President Donald Trump, a lot of them were fueled by Christian concerns. Their faith told them that this is the way that I am supposed to vote. Because Trump seems like the anti-woke candidate, seems like the anti-trans candidate, anti-abortion candidate, and God wants me to do that. Well, suppose the reason why you voted the way you're voting is because you've been believing myths this entire time. Wouldn't you like to know if that's why if that's what's fueling your worldview? Now, you might come to unbelieve all that, the Bible, I mean, and still think, I want to live a conservative life. I want to have a conservative worldview. But at least at that point, you won't be using non-reality to try to build up your real world anymore. And that's sort of what drives me is I want to get us as far away from non-reality as possible and as close to reality as possible. And then we can sit and think together and try to decide, how do we want to live? How do we want to be neighbors? How do we want to um, uh, be governed? We can decide all that, but let's do it based on reality, not based on myth. So want to give a shout out. What's up, Prophet Azad? I see you in the chat. Definitely appreciate you. Uh, Anybody who's watching this, whether you're watching it live or watching it after the live, if you're not subscribed to Prophet of Zod, you're missing out on tons of great content. But thank you so much for stopping through. So anyway, I saw so much online around the um, the election, and I posted something about a week or two ago where I said, as a Christian, I used to vote. I used to split my ticket as a Christian because there were some conservative policies that I liked. There were some liberal policies that I liked. And I liked more liberal policies than conservative ones. But at the same time, I always thought, okay, I can't just go, you know, I can't just vote straight down the party line. I can't vote for all liberals. I got to use my I got to split my ticket to have some conservatives to balance out the liberal president that I want. Okay, I got to have conservative people in the House or in the Senate, or vice versa. I got to the point where I began to say, you know what? I don't think that's wise because when you look at how divided our politics has become, how partisan, how I can't afford to be seen agreeing with somebody on the other side of the aisle. What you end up with is you end up with these do nothing Congresses where you don't get anything done because the House or the Senate, like it's all divided, and now you've got nothing but stalemate. And I got to the point where I said, man, I'd rather just have all one party in office, not because I want to see one party wreak havoc. I just would like us to move in a certain direction without the stalemate. And if we don't like the direction that we're moving in, well, we can use the next election as a referendum against what just happened. But I at least want us to move. I'm tired of nothing happening. And I sort of got my wish. We'll see what happens with the House in a few days or weeks as the votes come in. But I sort of got my wish, just not the way I wanted it, because now we're going to have a Republican president, Republican Senate, and maybe even Republican House. Well, they'll have motion. They'll move us in a certain direction. I hope we're able to recover from whatever direction they move us in. But there's a small part of me that just says, movement. It's like when you're sitting in traffic, sitting in bumper to bumper traffic. Like at some point, you're glad just to be going 5 miles an hour. Like at least we're moving. Well, I say that to say we're going to be moving. If we don't like the direction that we're moving in, hopefully we will organize and strategize a way to move us in a different direction, 2 years from now and 4 years from now as these new elections come up. And I know the concern for some people is, yeah, but if you let Trump do what he wants to do, get rid of these elected officials and now he's going to be appointing people. Well, now we may not have elections in 4 years. He's even said if you take what he said a certain way, he's going to do away with the need for people to vote. He may not have meant it that way, but all that to say, I understand what's at stake. I am concerned, just like everyone else is concerned, but at the same time, this is the system of government that we have. We have a system of government where we vote for our leaders, we put them in place, we encourage them by, letting them know how we want them to vote on issues, and if they don't vote the way that we want them to vote, then we try to get the majority to see it the way we want to see it, so that we can change that in the future. This is where we are. This is what we have to live with. Um, but how does this get us to talking about the return of Jesus? Um, I saw online uh, so much that made me say we need to talk about this. And I'll share maybe just one or two images that made me say, really. Um, so there's a Facebook friend, I guess I'll call him, associate. He posted that he was going to vote. He had his Jesus is King t-shirt on. Jesus is king, but you're going to vote for a president. So you've already got this mixed metaphor of you've got a king that you're serving, but you're going to vote for a president. Why are you voting for this president? Because you think this president is going to do what your king wants. Okay. So you go to vote for this guy. He puts up this post, and of course, all the Christians under his post are amening him, liking him, loving the Jesus is King t-shirt. Then a woman commented something that just made me say, this is strange. So she said, I'm with you on this one, brother. A woman cannot lead no country biblically. That nation is a curse. And then this is coming from a woman. So you can take this to the bank if a woman is even saying that a woman can't be president. And it just, and I know that hopefully there are some people in the chat who just see this, and I know you gag and barf emoji, and but what happens is you don't realize how your worldview, especially if you have a religious worldview, what it ends up doing is conditioning you to vote against your own interest. Now she thinks she's saying this in her own interest. I don't want to be cursed as a nation because the Bible has told me women should not, cannot lead. Now, of course, you can go to all kinds of passages in the Bible to show her your Bible is saying several different things about women in leadership. But this is the one that she's going with. A woman cannot lead no country. Broken English, of course. I don't want to say of course. I don't mean it like that. Um, of course, this is broken English is what I meant. Um, Biblically, that nation is cursed. Well, okay. So there's that. And then if you saw in the community, there were some more images that I thought were just, it's an interesting choice. You had your boy was on his way. I tried to crop the name out of most of these, but this one I didn't get to chop the name out of. Somebody was like, yes, he's traveling. Jesus has his bags packed. Now he's had 2,000 years to make it back to Earth, but now he's got 2 months to make it back to the White House. So his bags is packed. He's walking from wherever he is. Um, and there he is traveling back to the White House. This image conjured up so much for me. Um, and I don't even have to speak on why is Jesus white. Just um, it's so like the things we have to do, and this is what we're going to talk about because we're going to look at Revelation chapter 19 in a minute. The things you have to do to make your sense feel real. Like if you had not put Jesus in a linen robe type outfit here, if you had this dude just in some slacks and a t-shirt, you would have no way of knowing that this was a Jesus figure that you're looking at. You'd be like, who is this? Headed back to the White House. When was he ever in the what is this? But because he's got on a ephod or whatever the heck you would call his outfit, he's got on first century first century Common Era fit. He's got that drip from the first century on. That's the only way you know this is a Jesus figure. And maybe because the luggage in his hand, the luggage looks sort of like 16th century, maybe 17th century luggage. So you've got different different time periods here just in this image. First century fit, 16th century luggage, and he seems to be walking across some sort of field here. But because Jesus is he's so not of this world. Whatever world he was a part of was millennia ago. So you've got to do all kinds of things to make yourself feel like this Jesus who you cannot hear, you cannot see, you cannot get in touch with. You've got to make a million memes to make him seem closer than he actually is. And we're going to talk about some more updated versions of how do people try to make Jesus feel closer to returning than he really is. This is just one. All right. There was another one that I saw. This sort of is like the progression of what you just saw. So think about Jesus. Uh, yeah, think about Jesus getting closer to where we are. Somebody pulled. Is it worth showing? I guess I'll show it. Sorry, give me a second. Navigating these thumbnails here. Somebody posted this one. They did a good job of looking ahead at the winter wonderland. Now we got a mild winter right now, or mild fall. It was 80 degrees in Philadelphia yesterday, 76 degrees a day. But fast forward 2 months, maybe we'll feel more like winter. So they put Trump and Jesus in a winter wonderland, walking into the White House. Jesus is returning. Um, do you think it'll be enough? Jesus, who says the Bible says he's returning on a white horse, but if we can't get the white horse, maybe it's enough that he's returning to the White House because you've got this POTUS, you got this president who has given Christians the impression that I'm going to govern based on your interests. So even if Jesus doesn't physically make it back, maybe we could just tell ourselves that, hey, this is how he gets back. He gets back through these earthly leaders. There were people online. Remember back in 2020, all the preachers and prophets who said Trump was going to win. God told them they had a dream, an angel, whatever. Um, the preachers who wanted um, to reconcile or resurrect um, their title of prophet, redeem themselves, said, "Oh no, I had it wrong." When God told me Trump was going to be president again in 2020, I was wrong. God didn't mean 2020. God meant 2024. So now there are people who are trying to redeem themselves by saying this is what they meant when they said Trump was going to be president again. God wasn't wrong. They were wrong, but they weren't totally wrong. They just had the timing of it wrong. Okay, so there's that. I got two videos I want to watch, and this is going to get us into Revelation 19. First, I want to walk real briefly through the video I played at the open. This homegirl is crying her way through the return of Jesus. And I just have one or two thoughts, but then there's another video that I wanted to actually talk about this other video anyway. And it just so happened that the election and what's happening online pushed me in further in that direction. I said, oh, I can use that for sure. So I'll go back to the one I opened with, and this time we'll talk about it. And I don't know who this is. If anybody knows who this is, you can post it in the chat. All right.
Every season, believers have said Jesus is coming soon. But now we're getting stories of people all over the world receiving visitations from Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And
Now just think about this. Anytime you have somebody say, okay, she's admitting right up front. Christians have been saying this for eons that Jesus was coming soon. Yeah. She said, but now, like, if there's always a but now, remember back when you were a Christian? But God, there's always a but God. Well, but now, she says, now we're getting reports, stories of people all over the world having visitations of Jesus. What does that even mean? What does it mean to have a visitation of Jesus? Is he physically, literally showing up such that not just one person having a private visitation, but the one person could say to somebody else, did you see what you saw it too? Like, what does it mean to have a visitation? Because until you can verify this visitation, how do you know this isn't somebody just, I've been thinking about Jesus so long that now in my subconscious, even when I'm asleep, he's visiting me. He's not really visiting you. It's just that I've programmed myself to be thinking about him when I'm not thinking about him. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and the conversation was so intense that even when I went to sleep last night, me and that person was still having that conversation. Was that a visitation? Should I have called that person up this morning? Like, yo, you visited me in my dream. Leave me alone. Like I told you, leave me alone. Like, is that a visitation or is that just my mind continuing to do when I'm asleep what it was doing when I was awake? What does it mean for people to be receiving visitations? And why would you let that make you say, but now something different is happening? But that's where she is, or at least that's where she wants you to be. But now.
But now we're getting stories of people all over the world receiving visitations from Jesus.
Why is she crying? What is wrong? Like what's happening here? I don't know. This could just be stagecraft here. This could just be, how do I get you to tap into your emotions? Well, I got to get emotional. And if I get emotional, I will tap. I'm going to cause you to tap into your empathy and you get emotional with me so that you're going to feel the things that you think I'm feeling. It's almost like when you yawn, right? If I yawn, sorry if it happened, but typically when you see somebody yawn, you're going to yawn. And they say a sign of a sociopath is a person who doesn't yawn when they see other people yawn, because the sociopath does not have the empathy to connect with another person. Well, she's hoping that you're a very empathetic person. If she's crying, if she's carrying on, it's going to tap into something in you. So just know you're sort of being programmed here by the fact that I don't even know if she's really crying. I don't see tears. She just has the crying emoji face. She's got crying emoji face to get you to have it too. But you're probably, if you're susceptible to this, you're going to have the real tears to match.
Oh, yeah.
And say, I am coming sooner than you think.
Yeah.
I am coming. And he's only tarried so that more people can be saved.
She said, he's only tarrying. Jesus says, I'm coming soon. And he's only tarrying. Tarrying is a term that people use in religious circles. He's waiting. He's not coming back as quickly as you would want. He's waiting. He's tarrying. And she says he's only tarrying so that more people can be saved. This is the epitome of like, if that's the reason why he's tarrying, he's never going to return. Because when will he never be able to say, I'm waiting for more people to get saved? There's always going to be more people to get. The only way there could not be more people waiting to get saved is if people stop having children. As long as there are people being born, he can always be waiting for more people to get saved. So if that's the reason why Jesus is waiting, when we get to Revelation 19, we're going to see another reason why Jesus is never going to come back if that's what he's waiting for. But here she says he's waiting for more people to get saved. Okay. Or maybe what Jesus is going to do is he's got a cutoff point where he's like, all right, I'm how many? Okay. All right, I'm gonna wait a little bit longer. More y'all gonna get saved? Okay, I'm gonna wait a little bit longer. But come on, y'all. I gotta come back. I got more y'all coming. All right, but I gotta come back. All right, how many more? Dag. Like, is he gonna just at some point say, okay, I don't care. I don't care if more of y'all was going to get saved. I gotta come back. So no more. The ride is over. I'm stopping it now. Because at some point, what Jesus has to do is say, as long as there are more people who are going to get saved, if that's my reason, I can't come back. Unless I'm willing to say, F it. Some of y'all who were going to get saved, I guess y'all just aren't now because I gotta get back there. So she sort of puts Jesus in a tough spot here. Is he going to wait ad infinitum? Or is he going to have a cutoff point and just say, screw it? Some of y'all who were going to get in, I guess you guys aren't now.
And, it's hard to watch the suffering in the world and not wonder why he doesn't come. And it's hard. God doesn't want anybody to suffer, but we do cruel and unbelievably heinous things to one another. And those of us who believe in the goodness and justice and mercy of God say, why, Lord, why are you waiting? And he'll say, because I love them too. And I have a plan. I have a plan. It may not be when you think it's going to come, but it's going to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jesus will set his feet on that beautiful Mount of Olives right where he left off from.
So I know I was just harshly critiquing her playing on people's emotions, but in a very small way, she got me. Not because I'm like, oh, I want to cry too, or I think what you're saying is true, but the empathy in me, there's a little part of me that just said, what if she really believes this? I felt sorry for her just now because the tears that she's spilling and the way that she's sort of just God loves them too, and we do terrible things, and God's going to come back and he's going to make it right. He's going to, bring his justice with him and all that. And Jesus is going to come set his feet on the Mount of Olives. And I feel sorry for the people who really believe this. And I was one of those people who believe that the world is just so bad that the only thing that's going to make it right is Jesus coming back. But what it does is it sort of gives you it's sort of a defeatist mindset. Because rather than think and work and want and strategize and strive to make things better or make things right, you don't really have to because someone else is going to come back and do it. And until he does, I guess we sit and we cry like her, or, shout out to the churches who are rolling up their sleeves and trying to solve some of the social ills. But I don't know. For the people who really do believe that this is the world's only hope, I feel sort of bad for them because to me, what you're seeing as the only hope means then it's hopeless because that's no hope at all.
And all things will be made right, and there will be no more tears, and there will be no more suffering. His promises are true.
Yeah, sorry. But as wild as that was, let me just run to the chat real quick and make sure I'm not missing any station I need to pay attention to. As wild as that was, there's another video I want to play, and this is going to take us into Revelation chapter 19. This is a video from a pastor of a church that I used to go to. And I often get people say, hey, could you do a response to this video, to that video? And a lot of people I stay away from because they're in the circles that I used to run in. And I don't want any of the people that I used to run with to think this is a personal attack against them. So I stay away from a lot of people. But someone emailed me and said, "Hey, could you do a response to this video?" And it was a video of I forget the guy's name. I think it's uh, Philip Anthony something, or some of you guys know that he's a preacher out of Atlanta, pastor out of Atlanta. Someone emailed me one of his videos and said, "Hey, could you do a response to his video?" I said, "Nah, I'm not really interested in him." But Jay Witt has a whole series already responding to this same guy, so we'll check out his series. But then that same guy put on a conference at his church. And at this conference, he had a bunch of other people come through. And one of the people that he had come through was a pastor of the church that I used to go to. And the pastor is named Pastor Eric Mason of Epiphany Church in Philadelphia. And uh, the church was started by Eric Mason and another friend of mine, William Branch, who we were, AKA Ambassador, we were in the cross movement together. So they started this church called Epiphany. And Eric Mason is now the lead pastor of that church. And when I watched this sermon from Eric Mason, he did this sermon at this conference from this pastor in Atlanta. I forgot even what the name of the conference was, but he preached this sermon at this conference. And at this conference, they say they had 7,000 young people, 7,000 young, mostly African American people at this conference. And it was a huge like, yo, this is crazy. And they even started talking about, yo, this is the remnant. Because remember in was it First or Second Kings, God says to Elijah, I have 7,000 other prophets who have not bowed the knee. So if you're a young Christian and you see all these people like me, you see all these people leaving the faith, apostatizing, you're like, yo, is anybody like who's left? And then you have this conference where 7,000 people show up. You're like, oh, we're the remnant. Not everybody's leaving the faith. Look at all of us here. And it actually was so impressive, the fact that they had these 7,000 young people coming together. It made me say to Jay Witt, I'm like, yo, we actually might want to do a series covering some of the sermons from this conference. Because I think what's happening is there are people who I think there are people right now who see all these folks like me and others leaving the Christian faith, calling it out for its inconsistencies, its contradictions, its uh, anti-science, its ahistorical, stories and um, its mythology, calling it out. And there are people who are doing one or two things. They're secretly living with this doubt, or they're doubling down. Their grip is getting tighter on the faith. And so I think a lot of the people who are running to conferences like this, these are the people who are doubling down, who are strengthening and tightening their grip on the faith. And it made me say to Jay Witt, I think we might want to do a reaction series to this conference just to help the people who are like, wait, should I like I was about to defect. I was about to jump ship, but it looks like there's a resurgence. Looks like there's a revival. Should I jump ship or should I be a part of this revival? And I think we're going to do a series responding to some of these sermons just to help those who you were looking at the front door. You saw the BS. You saw that this can't be true. And now you're tempted to stick with it. We want to do this series to kind of help people say, nah, I was right to question it. I don't want to let the promise of community, the promise of, oh, we're not all defecting. We're diving in deeper. You don't want to let that make you second guess your gut reaction that tells you this isn't true. And so, anyway, all that to say, uh, this is a video from that conference where this guy, Pastor Mason, my former pastor, um, he's going to be talking about the return of Jesus. And it's very interesting to me. This is why I wanted to play this video tonight. because I heard him preach this this section of the scripture back in I think 2010, 2011, back when I was a firm believer. And when he preached it back then, it might even have been 2013 maybe. He preached it back then, and I was still firm in my faith at that time. So when he preached it then, I was like, yo, like, you're gonna hear people in this video, you're gonna hear them like, amen, like, ooh, Jesus, ooh, that's deep. You're gonna hear that. If this was back in 2013, I would have been one of them. My voice would have been the voice in the crowd saying, ooh, Jesus, that's deep. And now, here I am, 10 plus years removed, and my reaction to this kind of preaching is much different today than it was then. So I'm going to play this video. We're going to pause our way through it and talk about it. Then we're going to read Revelation 19. I'll share some thoughts, and then that'll be that. So give me a sec to pull it up here. If anybody knows the name of this conference, you can feel free to type that in the chat. But this video is going to tie together everything that I've been saying so far. All right, here it goes. He's talking about a scene in the throne room of God where God is on the throne and Jesus is beside the Father, God the Father. God the Son is beside the Father. And the Father's going to say, all right, it's been long enough. Time to get it popping. And look at this, the picture he paints.
Intercede for us. He's whispering in the Father's ear. The Father says, it is time. Yes.
All right, so just remember what I said, right? Jesus is so long gone. If he ever existed, he's so long gone. He's so off the scene that believers have to do so much to give one another the impression he not as gone as he seems. So now you have this pastor in a room full of 7,000 people. Of course, God is not there. Now they want to be able to say God's there. They want to say his presence is in the building and I feel his presence and he lives within my heart and all that, but he's not there. Right? Look at what's happening. You have the pastor on the stage, but behind him, you have the pastor on a huge screen. Why? Because if you're in a room full of 7,000 people and you're up in the back of the crowd, that pastor looks real small. So you've got to mediate the pastor. You've got to mediate him through the screen. That big screen on the wall behind him, that's like I went to a concert a few weeks ago. I went to a Stevie Wonder concert. And yes, I wanted to see Stevie live, but I spent most of the time watching him on the huge screen behind him. Why? Because I had great seats, but even from my great seats, he was sort of small in comparison to how grand he looked on that screen. So even though I had him immediately in front of me, he was not mediated. He was right there in front of me. I still prefer to watch most of the time the mediated version of him because mediated on that screen, I can get the big picture and I could also see everything in one glance on the screen that I wasn't able to see because I would have had to look over here to see the horn section, over here to see the string section, over here to see the background singers. The screen showed it all to me. The mediated version a lot of times does what you can't get from the immediate version. Now, granted, if he was to not be up on the stage, if he were to start walking through the crowd, you don't keep watching the big screen on the wall if he's walking through the crowd and he comes over to the section where you are. Why? Because you don't need him mediated anymore. You don't need him mediated because he's not on that stage way up in the front anymore. He's over near you. He's got the mic. He may not even need the mic anymore because he's right next to you. He's talking. He's look. You don't need mediation when the person is right there. In the same way that he's being mediated for these 7,000 people by the huge screen behind him, in the same way, God, for whatever reason, has made it so that he has to be mediated. No one has immediate access to God. He is mediated by books, mediated by stories, mediated by the man of God, the preacher, the prophet, the pastor. You have God mediated. This is why I call the God of the Bible Bible God, because at some point in my deconstruction, I realized I do not have immediate access to God. I've got God bound in a book. He's bound. He is Bible God. He is story God. All of God's actions are storied. They're way in the past or they're way in the future. He's mediated. Well, because God is mediated and not immediate, you've got to do all kinds of things to make him seem larger than life. You have to create big screens to bring God closer because he's so far removed. How far removed is he? None of us have seen him. None of us has heard him. And if you have heard him, you've only heard him in your mind, right? So just think about this. He's mediating God for you. He's even mediating Revelation 19. He's going to talk about a scene from Revelation 19. But sometimes even reading it's not enough because you may not have the imagination, or you may just have enough doubt to just say, man, reading it's just not the same. He's going to try to make Revelation 19 come alive for this crowd of 7,000 people. So now he's got God the Father on the throne, turning to Jesus, saying to Jesus, after all this time, he says to Jesus, it's time. Watch the believers in the room get into it because they've been trying to picture it. They've been waiting. They've been wanting it. It's never happened. But now you've got somebody who's going to mediate this situation for you and paint the picture for you in such a colorful way to give you the sense that it's happening. Even though it's not really happening, I'm going to give you the sense that it's happening because, like the woman said at the beginning of the other video, it's been so long. I know we've got Christians at all time periods saying he's coming soon, but trust me, it really is happening. It really is going to happen because now we got stories, once again, mediation. We've got stories of people getting visitations from Jesus. All this mediation to help something that's so far off seem like it's near. This is what Trump's presidency does for a lot of Christians. It makes them feel like this thing that's really far off is actually coming near. So once again, I'll start him over with God the Father talking to Jesus. Watch the palpable excitement from the believers in the room as he paints this picture to mediate this scene that's never going to be immediate.
Intercede for us. He's whispering in the Father's ear. The Father says, it is time.
I'm sorry. Even the way he had to change his voice to make you think this is what the Father will sound like. And he puts on his, James Earl Jones, it is time. Like, once again, this is mediation. But if you're in this crowd with 7,000 people and the man of God on stage gets in his Barry White voice and it is time, you've never heard God say it is time. So this might be as close as you get to that moment. So you've got to live in this moment. Like Eminem said, you got to lose yourself in the moment, hold it, never let it go. I may not ever hear it is time from the throne room. So I got this guy on stage about to take me there. I got to live in this moment.
The Father says, it is time. Yeshua says, Michael, bring me my horse.
I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to laugh. I'm sorry. If you go back and watch the episode, we did an episode on Ichabod, me, Jay Witt, and Albert Kim. The episode is called Jesus is Coming Back to the Future. And we talked about all the bizarre things that Revelation and Thessalonians talks about the return of Christ and how antiquated those things are now. Like, imagine being in awe of somebody showing up on a horse. Like, even when you see police on a horse, you're like, dude, really? Like, at least be a bike cop. Like a horse? Like, really? That's what y'all gonna do? To be in 2024 and have somebody say, as he's painting this throne room scene for you, Jesus calls out to the archangel Michael, bring me my horse. Why the heaven is Jesus going to need a horse? What the hell? I'm sorry, what the heaven? That was impressive in the first century. Not everybody had horses. Not everybody had horses that were trained for battle. Jesus on a war horse? Yo, you saying something. It's 2024. Imagine you being in this crowd, hearing somebody trying to get you excited as they mediate this throne room scene, and Jesus is calling for a horse. Like, that's a dead giveaway. That whatever is happening in Revelation, yeah, I know there's a lot of imagery and all that, but nonetheless, this situation is time locked. It's locked in time. It has no reference for today. It has nothing to do with anything beyond the lifetime of the people who were receiving these letters. Bring me my horse. That is not a flex. That's not a flex. Um, you show up with fashion from the 1970s, like, yo, I'm stunting on them now. That is not a flex. They looking at you like, bro, like, I don't know who told you that that's what we doing, but we not doing that. That's beyond retro. That's like, that's no. Like, we not doing that. But Jesus calls for his horse and watch the crowd get excited about a horse.
Bring me my horse.
Jesus. What? No. Somebody in that crowd should have said, why a horse? Like, you know what I mean? Like, no.
Then Jesus holds his arms out and they take off his cloak that filled the temple. And all he has on is a linen outfit with a golden bulletproof vest with red highlights at the bottom.
And I know all he's trying to do is bring the text alive. But there's something that's a little inglorious about God needing a bulletproof vest. Like, okay, you're painting the scene that he's ready for war, but what is the vest for? Protection from man-made weapon? Like, and here's the funny thing. This is what hip hop culture has done to the world. I think back in the day, 50 Cent, right, on the cover of Get Rich or Die Trying, rocking a bulletproof vest, trying to like show like, yo, my life is that serious. But in some circles, that really became fashion. I wonder if for this pastor in this situation, is the bulletproof vest really functional, or really is it really just fashion? You know, you talk about form over fashion. Is Jesus rocking the bulletproof vest really for form and fashion here, not for function? Because why would he need one? I don't know. Okay.
On is a linen outfit with a golden bulletproof vest with red highlights at the bottom. And a white horse comes up before the throne.
Sorry, the white horse comes up before the throne. Is the horse on air? Is this a Pegasus? Is it on the ground? Is there a ground there? Like, what is the horse trotting on for him to come up before the throne? I'm just curious how this scene looks as you're painting it.
And he gets on his horse. And when he pulls his leg up, he has a tattoo on his thigh. You know Jesus got a tattoo that says, faithful and true.
Now he's cooking right now. You can see he's in his motion. You can see, oh, I'm cooking, and the crowd is feeling it. I remember when he preached this back in, I think it was 2013. I was in the crowd and I was like, yo, because there was the cultural references and it was the Jesus is straddling a horse now. And as he gets on his horse, his robe lifts. So now you got to ask some more questions here. As his robe lifts, and you see this tat on his thigh. If his robe lifts anymore, do you see more? Does Jesus have genitals? Like, what's really happening here? like, what are you talking about? Or is the God man like a Ken doll? Does he have no like? He's got a tat on his thigh that says "faithful and true." This actually in Revelation. We're going to read this, where Jesus does have a name written on his thigh. But the cultural references has the crowd almost in a frenzy as he's talking about this scene that's never going to happen. You're never going to see it, so I've got to mediate it for you. I've got to bring it. I got to make it come alive for you and present it to you to give you the impression that these things that are never going to happen, this is as close as we're going to get. I got to make you feel like it's happening.
You know Jesus got a tattoo that says, faithful and true. Then he stands up and he says, Michael, prepare the armada. And all of a
Prepare the
sudden,
royal baggage.
trillions of angelic forces come up on the rise.
Yeah.
And then Michael.
In the same way that God doesn't need a bulletproof vest, why does God need trillions of angels? Why does God need an armada? Why does he need an armada? Why can't he just pull up or pull down? I don't know. Like you with a word. And why all this imagery? Remember I said this last on the last exit strategy on the Halloween episode. I was talking about Revelation. Michael Apple wanted to look at Revelation 16. So we looked at Revelation 16. And I said this, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But if you don't have the picture, you need the 1,000 words. And so what Revelation does is it gives you all these words to create word pictures, because that's as close to the real thing as you're actually going to get. If I had the real thing, I would not need to mediate it with words. But because the real thing is so non-existent, I'm going to need 1,000 words or more to at least paint the picture, because I can't really give you the real thing. A trillion angels. A God or a God man would not need a trillion angels. But I'm going to paint the picture for you to give you the impression that I'm actually giving you something that's worth seeing, because you're never going to see it.
Goes in front of the throne and he says, Alpha! 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 Alpha!
And if you don't know what's going on right now, he has appropriated the Black Panther Part 1, where the tribes are trying to figure out who the next ruler is going to be, and they the warrior tribe comes in chanting. Now he's got Jesus in heaven with his trillions of angels doing the call and response from Black Panther. So now you're really tapping in to the culture, and you're going to see the camera pan the crowd, and the crowd goes off because you're getting a chance to see something. I could probably even take the analogy even further here. When I went and I saw Black Panther, that scene, remember what that scene was. If you're African American, you know what I'm about to say here. If you're not, maybe you could that empathy we talked about. Maybe you could just put yourself in someone else's shoes. Think about African Americans, right? People who have lost connection to their heritage, lost their ancestors, lost their original languages, lost all of that, and struggle to keep some idea of culture alive on the shores of America. So this is why jazz music and blues music and soul music and gospel music and hip hop music and R&B, this is why these forms of art are so important to African Americans, because this is us trying to keep something of our culture alive and doing a bang up job at it in light of the circumstances. Well, when we saw Black Panther, they created this idyllic African culture with everybody regal and everybody, the science and the art and the technology and everything is next level. And you're watching this scene, it is almost like for some of us watching it, it was like, man, that's as close to our kingdom coming as we're probably ever going to get. You idealize it, you externalize it, you put it on a screen, and you get to watch it mediated that way because you can't touch the real thing. Well, in the same way, this picture from Revelation, it's idealized, it's externalized, it's mediated through story because you can't get to the real thing. So it's actually fitting for him to pull in this scene from Black Panther, this non-real, idyllic image into this other non-real idyllic image of what you want to see happen. He's married two mythical, or at least two fictional stories. He's married the Black Panther and Revelation chapter 19 here.
And Jesus goes like this. He says, steady.
I didn't even notice this before. I didn't even notice that the music had got involved. So you got the organ whirring in the background, helping to stir up the people. So there's a lot going on here to help you with this mediated scene, because I'll say what I was going to say. I'll save it.
Steady. You know what it's been all of these thousands of years where Lucifer has been allowed to rule the earth. But now it is time to snatch his diadem.
So Lucifer has been allowed to rule the earth all this time. It's been thousands of years, and Jesus is saying to the Armada, hey, look, y'all, it's been long enough. It's time for us to go get it. Lucifer's reign is over. We're going to go, he said, we're going to snatch his diadem, his crown, because he's been ruling the earth for thousands of years. And just look at the crowd. Look at how excited. Imagine. You don't have to imagine. Think back. At one time, this was your hope. Rather than deal with the reality of the world and the situation in which you find yourself, even for those who were not Trump voters, you now find yourself in a reality that you never thought that someone who could organize and green light January 6th to 2021. You never thought that anybody who could organize that would ever find themselves back in the position of about to be president again. Rapist, liar, failed businessman, all the things racist, all the things that you know about him, this is the reality in which you find yourself. But guess what? The non-Trump voter who's in the position that many of us are in, if you're a non-theist, especially, if you're a realist, if you're a skeptic, you're not about to tap into myth to help you deal with this situation that you might even hate. You're not going to turn to myth to deal with it. But this is the position that the believer is in. And think about it. When was Revelation written? Why was it written? It was written by Christians to Christians who were under persecution, who could not deal with the reality of their situation. So what do? What does apocalyptic literature always do? Revisionist history is going back in time to tell the story the way you wish it would have happened. Inglorious Bastards, right? One of my favorite movies is revisionist history. They tell the story about the end of World War II the way they wish it could have or would have happened, with Hitler being killed in an explosion. That's not how it happened, but they tell it that way because that's what they wish would have happened. Well, apocalyptic literature is almost like it's revisionist future. It's not revisionist history, it's revisionist future. You're envisioning the future the way you would want it to happen, even though you know there's no chance of it happening that way. That's what apocalyptic literature is. So this is revisionist future. And you've got a crowd full of people, such were some of you at one time, hearing this revisionist future, and you're out of your seat and you're out of your mind, going nuts because he's mediating this scene that's never going to happen, and this is as close to it as you're ever going to get.
To take my planet, sons and daughter of God who have died, take your place. Just rise, so that I may rule the planet.
As boisterous as he is, here's the weird juxtaposition here. The Christian is watching this saying, Pastor Mace, as great a storyteller as you are, and as great a picture painter as you are, as great a cultural reference maker as you are, the Christian watches this and says, this pales in comparison to what it's really going to be like when Jesus returns. I appreciate you doing a great job of giving us a foretaste of the glory divine, but when it really happens, it's going to be this times infinity. Whereas the non-theist is watching this saying, damn, yo, this is as good as it's going to get. You standing in front of this crowd with the music playing in the background, raising your voice at them, is as good as it's going to get. Think about that juxtaposition. One person watches it and says, wait till the real thing comes. This is going to pale in comparison. The other person watches this and says, this is the realest as Revelation 19 is ever going to get.
Gabriel, blow the trumpet.
Once again, who's riding on horses? Who's blowing trumpets? What are you talking about? You're talking about first century warfare that some possibly Jewish, definitely Christian writer wanted to see happen to the Caesar at that time, to the emperor of Rome, to get the oppression to stop. This was their hope. They wrote revisionist future. Here you are 2,000 years later, and what was their hope is your hope. Really? Really, Christian, this is your hope. See the crowd. So he says, the trumpet blows, the armada starts coming back. He says the third heaven opens, the second heaven opens, the first heaven opens. And I would imagine he's getting this from what's supposed to be Paul, who says he knows of a person who either in actuality or in a vision went to the third heaven. So he has Jesus coming back from the third heaven, the second heaven, the first heaven. I hope he knows, like, where do you get the first, second, third heaven from? Because as far as we know, we send satellites and rocket ships into outer space. You don't get to heaven. If you would have asked them back in the day, where's heaven? Above the clouds. Oh, no, no, no. There's the third heaven. Well, actually, where's that come from? Well, if you read the book of Enoch, it's 10 heavens. Like, Paul shortchanged us by talking about the third heaven. The book of Enoch, where he even gets this from, says there's 10 heavens. Why doesn't he have Jesus ascend from the 10 heavens? He only has him coming from the third. I guess he doesn't believe the book of Enoch, but Paul got his three heavens from Enoch's 10 heavens. But you're married to the biblical text the way Protestants see it, so you don't go 10 heavens deep. Your Jesus is only three heavens deep. Nonetheless, all that to say, this story, he has them blowing the trumpets here. This is where you do what you can to make this scene come alive. At some point, there's a episode I've been holding off on, talking about the afterlife, and I'm going to talk about that hopefully in a few weeks. But you have all this imagery about what's going to happen when Jesus returns. It's weird to me that a lot of what you find in Revelation, it's really just about getting the powers that be currently out of their positions of power. All the dramatic stuff you see is about undoing the world the way that it is and recreating things so that something new can take place. But if you notice, Revelation, the Gospels, Thessalonians, none of them can ever tell you what it's really going to be like in this new world once Jesus does return, once he does come back on his white horse and tramples his enemies under his feet. What is it going to be like? I said I was going to read Revelation 19, but he walked through it well enough. I don't need to read it. What is it going to be like? No one knows what it's going to be like. Why? Because the imagination of the men who were writing these things could not think that far ahead. They couldn't think past horses and trumpets. They're not going to be able to think about a new creation. They can't tell you that. It reminds me of the Joker character in, I think it was The Dark Knight, where the Joker talks about like why he does what he does. He says, I'm like a dog, like barking at cars. Like when a dog's barking at cars, like and wants to get off his leash and chase down a car, that dog doesn't know what he's going to do if he ever catches the car. He's got no clue. He's just barking because the car is going past and he don't know what he's going to do with it. That's what apocalyptic literature is like. It's about ending the world the way it is now because we don't like the way it is now. We don't like the fact that evil people do things we don't like. We don't like the fact that homosexuals do things that we don't like, or transgender people do things we don't like, or people who are more liberal than we don't like that. And if we can't get the Supreme Court lined up the way we want and Congress lined up the way we want and the president, if we can't do that, we're going to need apocalyptic literature to make us feel like Jesus is coming back because it's all about ending things the way things are now. But in terms of what it's actually going to be like once we get Jesus back on earth, I don't know. I'm the dog barking at the car. I don't know what I'm going to do when I catch it. None of them can tell you what that new world is going to be like. They can tell you what it's going to maybe look like in some ways. It's going to be a gate on this side and stones on this side. What's it going to be like? What are we going to do? What are you going to do in this new heaven and new earth? You got it. You wanted it, right? You wanted a new heaven and new earth. You got it. What are you going to do? Hell if I know. I'm the dog barking at cars. I just wanted to catch up to it. Now that I have it, I couldn't tell you. I haven't the faintest of what I'm going to do with it now that I have it. Just saw a super chat pop up. Who girl, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. I don't see a message. I guess it's just love. Unless there's another message. If there was a message that was supposed to be there, type your message and I'll see it underneath. Otherwise, definitely appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. All that to say, uh, Jesus was supposed to be coming back on a white horse. That's not happening. And so now what you have is Christians settling for Jesus coming back to a White House. If we can just get a president to do what we feel like God wants us to do, we'll take that and we'll call it Jesus' return. See, told you. I wonder what the preterists would say. The preterists would say, even though Jesus promised to come back before or around the time of the destruction of the temple, 70 AD, they say he did come back just spiritually. And then they look for signs that he actually is ruling. And the signs that he actually is ruling would be things like maybe Rome making Christianity the official religion of the land, or Trump giving us a Supreme Court that's heavily conservative. This is what you end up doing when Jesus tarries, like Homegirl said, he's tarrying, he continues to tarry. Well, now you got to take the White House Jesus because the White Horse Jesus, he's not showing up. So there you have it. Any comments, leave them in the chat while I'm still here. Any questions, comments, get them in. If not, come back by and drop a comment under the video. I definitely appreciate you guys rocking with me. And I got a lot of good stuff I'm planning. Update on the audiobook I've been working on. I know y'all been hearing me complain about this thing. I finally have turned the corner and now I'm banging out the chapters as opposed to having to go back through and redo stuff over and over again. So that's coming soon. Outside of that, look for me and Jay Whip will be doing the series responding to the sermons from that conference. I'm looking forward to that. And I think that is pretty much it for the night. I'm going to hang around for a minute in case there's any comments or questions popping up in the chat. But I hope you guys are not too distraught by what's going on in our politics. Keep having conversations. I see people online cutting other people off. We need to continue to have conversations. We need to continue to speak for people that don't have a voice. We need to continue to be in arm's reach of people because these are our neighbors. We are fellow citizens. And we need to, in the same way that that woman was drumming up tears to make people more empathetic to her, we need to let our pain, if we end up encountering any pain, be felt and heard and seen so that our fellow citizens see the pain that we're experiencing and say, man, I didn't know this was going to affect you that way. Maybe I want to help remedy this situation I caused for you. We want to be as human as possible, and we want to be the best humans possible. There is a side of us that tends to isolate ourselves and cut people off and be tribalistic. And there's a side of us that can reach out and be empathetic and be open-minded and be solution-oriented. Let's be those kinds of humans in a time like this. All right. Much love, you guys. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.